Good evening and welcome to our first ever College of Liberal Arts virtual town hall. My name is Megan Mell and I'm the Director of Alumni Experiences and College Events, and I'll be your host for the next hour. I want to thank all our alumni and friends for joining us today. This town hall gives us a chance to connect with some of our 170,000 plus alumni and have an exchange that will give you a more in-depth look into your college and a chance to share firsthand some of the many highlights that have emerged in our lives during this time of COVID-19. Today, we'll be joined by John Coleman, Dean of CLA, Natasha Sohni, President of the CLA Student Board, and additional CLA faculty and staff who will help answer questions we've received from you, our alumni and friends. But first, I'd like to introduce our Dean of the College of Liberal Arts, John Coleman, and have him welcome you and share some opening remarks.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Megan. I want to welcome everyone to CLA's World Media Headquarters, also known as my dining room. And we are scattered all across the Twin Cities to bring you tonight's event. And it's really quite a thrill to have all of you with us. I want to thank all of our alumni and friends. And among those alumni and friends are some of the faculty and staff at the College of Liberal Arts. And I want to extend a special thank you to them because over the past month, over the past 6 weeks, I want to tell everybody they have done an extraordinary job. They should certainly be proud of their efforts, and all of you who are alums and friends of the college would be proud of the work that they're doing to make sure that our students, our staff, and our faculty are thriving, as well as all of our community partners that we work with so closely. And I'm deeply appreciative and deeply impressed by the work that they've done. The spirit of cooperation has been outstanding these past weeks. I want to talk a little bit about how we think the liberal arts has us ready for this moment. In one way, it's a moment nobody could quite be ready for. We've never seen anything like this before, but there's some things about what we do in the liberal arts that fit our time particularly well. When I think about our core commitments in the liberal arts, there are two in particular that come to mind as I think across the arts, humanities, and social sciences. First of all, we look at the world through the eyes of others. Our focus is to understand how people think about the world and to understand their situation, whether that's an actor in a play, whether it's a character in literature, whether it's a voter, it's a consumer, it's somebody who is interacting with the legal system, whoever it might be. The liberal arts looks at the world through the eyes of others, and we try to understand how people perceive that world. And right now, that has been a very important skill and a very important value for us to look at the world through the eyes of others as we're trying to be compassionate, considerate, and take care of those in our CLA community and those who we interact with. A second core feature of the liberal arts is that fundamentally, most of our disciplines, really all of our disciplines, are trying to help individuals and communities thrive. We study how that works, what helps people succeed, what helps communities thrive and be healthy, and on the other side, what holds people back and what holds communities back. And in this time, in our society and in our history, that understanding of what helps people propel forward and to thrive, and also what creates challenges, is deeply valuable and deeply important, both in terms of what we teach, but also the research and creative work that we do as well. So let me tell you a little bit about what we've been doing in the college. You'll hear more about this over the course of the evening as well. We've taken a lot of practical steps in response to COVID-19. Early on, this was probably 6 weeks or so ago now, I created an ad hoc committee in the college to meet initially every day to study all of the issues that COVID-19 presented for us in terms of our instruction, our research, our workforce, our alumni relations. Every conceivable facet of our work went through the prism of this ad hoc committee. And we were taking in questions, they were taking in questions every day, and we were trying to get answers out to people, or where we didn't know the answers, doing a bit of additional research. So we coupled that ad hoc committee work with frequent communication from me, but also from other offices in the college to make sure that everybody was feeling as informed as we possibly could be, and letting them know what we were working on, what discussions were underway, and so on, because I don't want anyone to feel left behind in the conversations or in the progress. So that was a very important first step. Our students had to return from learning abroad, so we facilitated that and found other things that they could do in a remote and distance way while back at home. We, of course, stopped all of our travel for business and other purposes. We moved all of our instruction into a remote or in distance format. We don't quite call that online because it's not true online. It wasn't built from the ground up as online, but it is being taught certainly over the internet. And so really all of our courses, all of our instruction in a matter of about 5 to 10 days had to be moved online. It was an amazing undertaking. We're continuing that for the summer. All of our instruction in the summer will also be in that format. And we're thinking about the fall. We don't quite know yet what will happen there. The university will make a decision about that, but we are preparing for the eventuality that some or all of the fall semester might also have to be taught in that remote and distance format. So we want to be ready for that when the decision is made. One of the leading forces in making all this happen is CLA's Liberal Arts Technologies and Innovation Services, or Lattice as we call it. And they were in the vanguard of transforming hundreds of courses over a very short period of time across spring break as well into a format that students could log into in some way, shape, or form, whether it's in conference or in other forms. So I want to invite Jamie Hansen. Jamie is our Chief Information Officer in CLA. He is the Director of Lattice. I'd like to have him jump in here and tell you a bit about what Lattice did in order to get the college ready and online for this remote and distance learning that we are now have in place. Jamie?
Thank you, Dean Coleman. Yeah, our work began a couple weeks before the campus shut down. We were working with the Learning Abroad program. We had students returning to campus or back to the Minnesota, and many of their instructors were still in Italy or France or wherever they might be, and we had to, recreate new courses for them to continue their teaching. And then shortly after that, we had the campus closed, shut down, and didn't give people very much time. And we had to fully move into what you just described as the alternate or remote, because just really didn't have full amount of time to build that from scratch online courses that we'd like to do. But in that limited time, we did our best. We taught a lot of people how to use Zoom that we're using now, Canvas, and some of them we just said, just keep using email. You know that best. Keep in communication with your students and just keep moving on, and we'll build as we go. We had about 400 of our instructors take us up on some live assistance and training in either groups or small groups, and as much as we could one-on-one, so that they could be trained in this new format as quickly as possible. And just speaking of Zoom, we've had 40,000 Zoom sessions just in the last week alone. It has been a major tool for us. And if you've heard about them in the news, some privacy or security issues, they have been very quick to address those, and we've really increased the security of our program really fast. We're moving into summer. Base level of training we're expecting of all of our instructors. We've had 100 of them sign up already to be trained in how things work, so that we're kind of up in the quality as we go. And by fall, we're going to up it some more. So it's been a lot of it's been quite a bit of work, but we're making some good progress. A year ago, we had a few high quality examples of online teaching in the college, include our first year experience course, Psychology 1001, Professor Manson's geography course, and some writing studies. And now we've blended almost the entire college curriculum. So I really think we're on a good path. Back to you, Dean Coleman.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. And again, Jamie Lattice and his entire team have been doing amazing work. I've heard so many appreciative comments from faculty and staff about the work they've done. We have been, as Jamie indicated, trying to respond to student needs and concerns. Lattice works with students as well on their technology needs, and also works with faculty and staff on their technology needs. We've had advising moved entirely online, career counseling moved entirely online, so students can do one-on-one sessions with their advisors. And over the first 4 or 5 weeks of this, we had about 100 advising sessions per day online. So that got off to a great start, and that will continue to grow. The university more generally has been moving resources around mental health and other kinds of resources online as well to have that available to our students. I do want to make a special note of our alumni and donor response, which has been incredible over these past weeks. Your generosity has been just humbling and so appreciated. We have an emergency fund in the college, the Student Emergency Fund, that's available for undergraduate and graduate students facing an unexpected financial challenge that we don't want to derail their road to graduation. And we got 75 new gifts in that fund in March, and that has continued strong through April, and the fund is up at around $50,000 of support that we can working along with the university, which also has a new fund for student financial support. Working in complement with that fund, we can help as many of our students as possible. Our students are obviously entering into those who are graduating are entering into a challenging environment in terms of unemployment and recession and so on. So certainly would like to ask our alumni if there's any opportunities that you would like us to know about to present to our students, please do. We're still working with employers who are trying to reach and connect with our students. We recently had a session with about 100 employers online who are trying to find ways to connect with students. So even in a difficult market, we have employers who are seeking out what CLA students have to offer. So if you, as an alum or friend of the college, would like to be in touch with us about that, please do. CLA is at its base, we're a research college. We are at a research institution, and that's what makes us different from other liberal arts colleges around the country. And we're proud of that, and it drives a lot of our success. It drives our great work with our community partners, and it brings something different to our students in their instruction as well. And I always say it's better to be taking classes with the people who are writing the books and writing the articles, and not just assigning the books and assigning the articles. And that's what CLA students get. And they are taking classes with the artists who are creating the art and so on. So we believe that's an advantage of liberal arts at a place like the University of Minnesota. So we've seen our research strengths called into action over these past few weeks. Members of our economics department, Professor Chris Phelan, Tim Kehoe, V.V. Chari, all of them are also connected with the Federal Reserve here in Minneapolis. They have been actively and in public with op-eds and other kinds of availability of doing interviews and so on to try to lend the expertise of economics to thinking about the pandemic and how to respond to it. So they've been doing great work. Professor Phelan will be teaching a course in May called The Economics of Pandemics, which we very cleverly numbered Economics 2020. That will be, of course, online and available. And so you can check that out if you might be interested in taking a 1-credit course over about a 3-week period. Regents Professor of History, Erica Lee, is an expert on migration, race, ethnicity, immigration, and she has spoken widely about issues of discrimination that are faced by Asian Americans and Asians since the outbreak of COVID-19. And so she has also been a very prominent voice from our college. Professor of Sociology, Phyllis Mone, is a world-renowned expert on the workforce and on transitions into retirement and on transitions to different kinds of workforce realities. She's been out in the New York Times and on Fortune magazine and many other places, sharing her insights about what's happening to the workforce right now and what are we learning from COVID in terms of maybe some permanent transformations in the workforce and in the workplace going forward. So those are just some examples. There's much more of that you can see. If you go to our homepage, cla.umn.edu, you can link out to a page that has our faculty research that is in or around this issue of COVID-19 pandemics, emergencies, and so on. So they are doing remarkable things. Our faculty, our staff, and our students have been doing remarkable things over this very quick transition period. As you all know, COVID time is an unusual thing. It's one day can be a week or a month's worth of change, and each day feels very new from the last one, and it is very rapid in its own way. So the pace has been very quick of change, and people have really stepped up and done a great job. And that includes our students as well, who went away for spring break, and the world kind of flipped upside down over the course of spring break, and then they came back, or they didn't come back. Some of them came back to Minneapolis, others did not, and they are in other parts of the country. So speaking of our remarkable students, I would like to introduce you to and invite our CLA Student Board President, Natasha Sohni, to join me for a bit of conversation to hear about the student perspective. Natasha and I meet every month in her capacity as the Student Board President, and she's been an outstanding president, very active in that role. I've been so pleased to work with her and to partner with her on various initiatives and to bounce ideas off of each other. And the whole student board has really stepped up to do great work this year. So I want to thank Natasha for being here with us tonight. And we talked a few weeks ago when we had our last monthly meeting, and that was also online via Zoom. So I got a little bit of a sense of how you're doing, but could you share with people, how are you doing? This is a big transition for you personally, and how are things going for you?
Thank you, Dean Coleman, for your kind words. I am doing okay for the most part. I think this is definitely a huge adjustment to make, especially given it's my last semester of my undergraduate career. So I've been trying to maintain as positive of an attitude as I can, while also staying aware and making sure that I'm up to date on everything happening. And I'm just thankful to be safe and have a safe place to be, and be financially secure, given that so many people are not right now. And I think that's been my main focus, is not only making sure that I'm doing okay personally, but also focusing on those around me and those in my community, and making sure that we're all moving forward as best we can together.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. What have you been hearing from other students about how social distancing and distance learning is affecting their health and well-being? I know this has been a big issue for the student board this year, certainly, but also last year as well, really thinking about issues of student well-being and mental health, and you launched an initiative around that on the student board. Student board has also been active over the time of COVID and other ways of trying to support students. So tell us a little bit about what you're hearing from students around those issues, and then what you and the student board are doing.
Yeah, so it seems as though a lot of students are thankful right now that their professors are being so accommodating. And I would say from personal experiences, and just from what I've heard from peers and friends as well, is that while a lot of adjustments have had to be made, professors across the board are being pretty accommodating. And I think it's hardest for students who do have more interactive classes, whether they be labs or whether they're art students or things like that. And that makes it harder. It's obviously harder to do those things online, but I think a lot of students in this time are just learning how to adapt. And I know that obviously for study abroad students as well, it's been super disappointing. And I know students across the board, some are continuing to be in B-term classes, other ones just withdrew from the semester and are just gonna continue on in the fall. with their classes. But personally, on the CLA Student Board side, we've been trying to engage students as much as possible virtually on our social media, making sure that we're still sharing resources, whether they be resources for students, such as the emergency fund, which we were proud to donate a portion of our budget to the emergency fund as well, or sharing resources such as mental health resources, or places that are still like local restaurants and stores that are still doing pickup and delivery in and around the Twin Cities. And then beyond that, making sure that students aren't feeling isolated during this time. So we recently hosted a Netflix party for students to join, and you could all chat with each other and things like that. And we're doing a giveaway on our social media for different restaurant gift cards and some other higher end prizes. And then I think we're planning on doing another Netflix party as well, and some other virtual chat options for students.
Well, now everybody wants to know what you were watching on Netflix. So what were you watching on Netflix?
We watched this past time, we watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So it was a pretty quick movie, but pretty entertaining. And what we usually do is have a poll on our social media for students to vote on what movies they want to watch. And that's kind of how this one won. So we'll see what happens next time.
Yes, Bueller, indeed. You touched a little bit on this in your comments, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about that. You know, maybe those early days of transition to these classes where, you know, just a week before you had been sitting in a classroom with the professor and with others, and now here you are, sort of sitting with each other on a screen, in a square on a screen, a different kind of format. Was it relatively smooth, kind of as the transition went, and how have students been responding to, it's not the same as being in the classroom, but how have they responded overall?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the class. I know that even before spring break, a couple of my professors were already preparing to move online and were more proactive about it. So they had already told us about the alternatives that may or may not take place given that we do move online, how our exams will be, and how we'll be doing our assignments and engaging with the coursework, while other instructors necessarily weren't as prepared for it. And it's definitely helpful to be in person for certain types of classes. But I think overall, just because we're all in a time where everyone has to be accommodating, I think what's nice is a lot of professors are recording their Zoom lectures just because people are in different time zones or don't have the best access to technology or the internet. And so they're able to record their lectures on Zoom and put them online for students, or simply even give students a pass on certain assignments. And then I think also the pass fail option really helps as well, just because a lot of students during this time can't devote themselves physically or mentally to their coursework. And I know, like in some of my classes, if you simply just stopped doing the work right now, you would, they made sure, like professors in those classes made sure that you'd have a passing grade just because they know that this is a difficult time.
Great, thank you for that. I do also want to give a shout out to your Vice President, Jamie Trainer, who's also been terrific to work with as well. And have one final question for you. You are a senior, as you mentioned, you're graduating, and talk about a world turned upside down. You're entering that world turned upside down. You'll have a degree in political science, economics, and public health. So how's your perspective maybe changed a bit on graduation or next steps, and what are you thinking about all that?
I think personally, as someone who likes to plan and likes to know what's next, this definitely is an unsettling time for me. And I am also someone who's been fortunate to receive a lot of opportunities through that relate to what I want to do in the future with my career, and with the degrees that I have. So it's kind of unnerving to be in this state of uncertainty. And I think given that I'm in the social sciences and planning on going into a career of in politics and advocacy, now is like the prime time for me to be applying to jobs if we were like in a normal situation. But given that we're not, I've still been applying to different positions, but I'm not sure if or when I'll hear back and what the responses will be, just because I know that a lot of organizations, whether they be nonprofit or companies, don't have the capacity to hire more more graduates right now. But I just keep hoping and praying that something will come along in due time. And again, I'm very fortunate to not have to worry about where I am financially right now and have the savings for that. But I know that as the days pass, this is something that's constantly on my mind and constantly a worry of mine. So I'm just trying to take every opportunity I see and reach out to as many folks as possible. And I think for everyone who's listening right now, like Dean Coleman mentioned earlier, if you are an alumni and you do have opportunities available at your place of employment, like definitely reach out to CLA, reach out to students, because not only myself, but my friends and peers are also in this time of uncertainty as well. And we're all looking for opportunities and jobs and are open to taking a lot of different opportunities. So definitely we are looking for those resources, and we're glad that CLA has been able to support us thus far. And I'd be appreciative to hear more about opportunities even as the days come.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Natasha. Appreciated your leadership and really appreciate you being with us here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Natasha, for joining us tonight. Now we'd like to invite Dean Coleman and a few CLA experts to answer some questions that were submitted by you, our attendees. A number of attendees had questions about how we're handling online instruction. So here's our first question from Sherry D. How is CLA and the university in general handling classes that cannot be taken online, such as laboratory classes or group music rehearsals? I'm going to toss this one over to Jane Blocker. She is our Associate Dean for Arts and Humanities and a professor of art history.
Hi, thank you so much, Megan. My little on-mic thing wasn't working there. That's a great question. You know, I think in this moment, there's a strange irony that I think the arts departments are the most challenged in an online environment. It's very difficult to make pottery if you can't spin clay on a wheel, and it's very difficult to create a dance when you're the only body in the room, or to do a play with yourself. But the arts departments have been enormously resourceful in this moment. For example, a group of BFA students created something that they called the Quarantine Bake-Off, in which they solicited short one-act plays from around the world. They thought they might get a few responses. They had 4,000 submissions, read them, and then performed some things online. Some of the music students are performing together in Zoom settings. Even the dancers, I heard from the chair of the dance department that normally they would do an end of semester kind of recital, and they would do it in a stage with a work light on. And because they're having to do it at home, they're going out and performing dances in the snow and in the rain and in moonlight and various kinds of things, and producing really beautiful results. So while on the one hand, the arts are challenged in an online environment, they also thrive there. The arts are probably the most important source for us to think about the complexities of the moment that we're living in, isolation and fear and just a sense of sadness. The arts are addressing those things in a really robust and productive and beautiful way. So it is ironic that both of those things are happening right now.
Thank you so much. Our next question from Craig C. How are you working with the disability services to ensure that students receive any needed accommodations? I'll ask Jamie Hansen, CLA's Chief Information Officer, to take this one.
All right, thank you, Megan. I think for that, in our work with instructors across the college, we're always advocating for and integrating accessibility best practices into all of our services and the templates we create for instructors. It's been a big theme for the last couple of years to really make a big difference for those with these needs. We also connect faculty and instructors to disability services because it really comes down to it's the responsibility of the individual instructor to make sure those accommodations are implemented. And that has not changed with the COVID-19 pandemic situation. They still need to do that. And disability services has continued their direct support. They're available to individual faculty to help them make those connections for students. So I do not think anything really has changed. The technology might change, the situation might change, but our commitment to this has not changed at all.
Thank you. Our next question is from John W. For many students, taking online classes presents a new challenge they are not well suited for, nor did they sign up for that method of instruction. Under these difficult conditions, what provisions are being made for grading during this semester? Ozkan Kerner is a professor of communication studies and serves as CLA's Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education. Professor Kerner, can you take this one?
Thanks, Megan. I sure can. Yes, absolutely. Remember, you talked already about the efforts that the faculty has been making to adopt to the online format, but it's clear that students are not necessarily prepared for this, and also that they're clearly anxious about their ability to obtain a grade that they desire. In response to that, we have basically done a couple things. From a policy perspective, we have made it possible for students to decide to take a pass or failing grade all the way till the end of April. And so they can try out how the new format is working for them and how they're performing. And if they feel confident in earning the grade they like to earn, they can choose the A to F grading scheme. Or if they're somewhat concerned, they can just always opt for the pass or fail option. The other thing is that we've been doing is also from a policy perspective, we have suspended rules that limit the number of pass-fails classes that students can take. And we also loosened some of the rules about how many of these passing grades can count towards your major or minor. So there's a lot of recognition that the students might experience anxiety, and we're really trying to reduce this and trying to accommodate students' anxiety as much as possible. The other thing we've been doing, and as we're working with Lattice and the Center for Education Innovation, really talking to faculty about ways to create grading and assessment situations that are much more suited to the online environment, that are not sort of final exams that are timed and that might make it difficult when students experience technological difficulties, that they're feeling that they're underperforming in these circumstances, and also assessment methods that don't rely necessarily on having been able to attend all live lectures, maybe things more like writing a research paper or essay type of examination. So we've really been working very hard with faculty, and faculty has been very receptive to these ideas about reducing the anxiety for students. So I think we'll have been doing okay, and I think that was somewhat reflected in Natasha's comments around her experience as well.
Great. From Kathleen H. Will study abroad programs still be offered next spring, 2021? What is the current thinking on this, realizing it may change? Professor Kerner, I think this one's for you too.
Thank you. Yes, it's of course very difficult for us to predict what the future will hold. I mean, we all obviously hoping that by spring, certainly things are back to normal, more or less. Hopefully we have developed a vaccine and people will be able to travel and go abroad. So we are certainly preparing for the eventuality that the overseas program and the study abroad programs can proceed as hoped for and anticipated. At the same time, we also clearly anticipating that there might be problems, that there might be still travel restriction in place, and we're monitoring the situation very carefully. We working with our overseas programs, and we have various relationships. Some programs we organize and own ourselves, so to speak. In other situations, we have local partners that provide a lot of the logistics and the surroundings for us, and we closely monitor the situation. We're working with them. We have a couple providers that are preparing themselves to create virtual classrooms. And well, we have to see whether that's of interest to students. Obviously, part of the study abroad experience is to be abroad, to experience the other culture, to experience other people in their environment. And the virtual situation can not create that as easily, but we work on all kinds of possibilities, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that indeed we be able to send our students abroad. But of course, our main concern is the safety and the well-being of our students, and there's absolutely nothing that we will do to put that at risk. And so unless we're absolutely certain that these programs are safe and our students are secure, we will not send students abroad. So at this point, it's really a wait and see attitude. We are ready to jump back into the business of learning abroad, but we'll certainly play it by ear and make sure that we are safe and sound on this.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Jan M. Jan asks, how likely is it that this spring's experience will create a trend and/or demand for more online learning and less bricks and mortar classroom experiences? Of course, my preference would be that I hope not. Dean Coleman, do you want to take this one?
Happy to do so. Thank you. Thank you, Megan, and thanks to Jan M. for the question. It's an interesting moment. Up until now, relatively few of our students had taken an online class, and certainly few of our faculty had taught one. And as I mentioned before, most of what we're doing now is not genuine online course delivery where you're building a course from the ground up to take advantage of all the aspects of online. So we will, I believe we'll see some additional interest among some faculty in thinking about at least creating more from the ground up online courses. And some of our students may find that that's beneficial to them as well, because it allows them time flexibility. They could do an internship, or they could be studying abroad or having some kind of travel experience when that happens, but it provides a little bit more flexibility. So I suspect we'll see some interest among our faculty and instructors, and some additional interest among our students. But CLA is a residential college at a residential university. The fundamental core of what we do will remain the residential experience. So the way that I look at this is not just more online, but are there kinds of things or kinds of opportunities that are actually best done or better done through an online technology, through online tools? And that's always been the way that we've tried to talk about this. It's not switching to online for online's sake. It's, are there some things you can do in that format that are hard to do when you're meeting in person? And just to give one really simple example, I was talking with an instructor who said that they hadn't made the move into this technology before, but now that we all need to, she had realized, rather than talking about this particular author, I could actually have the author be part of the class and talk about her work. And so the students could meet that author and ask questions and have that give and take. Now, we've had that ability for quite some time. We could have done that. But most faculty weren't necessarily thinking about doing that so much. And maybe you'd think about bringing somebody to campus if you were going to have students interact with them. So I think it'll create some new opportunities there. Fundamentally, we will remain and we will be primarily a residential college, which is as it should be. But I do think there'll be opportunities in some spaces where online really will create some innovative possibilities that we couldn't do in person. I think we'll also see this at the graduate and professional side as well. There may be some opportunities for some online master's programs or professional certificates for people who are already out in the workforce. We have a little bit of that already in the college, and I could see some of our faculty and some of our departments saying, well, maybe we should think about that. There's an interest in a market in a particular area, and maybe we could create a one-year sequence of classes online. And part of what we do is we serve the state of Minnesota, certainly, but we serve more broadly than that. So we see that as part of our obligation. And if we can reach people around the state and around the country and around the world more easily online, then maybe we will want to think of some opportunities that we have that way as well. So I think the balance will be great. I am very pleased about that. There won't be any push to tell people to be online, but I think you'll see that some faculty will think about some things that they can do that the online format works well. And some of our students may add a little bit more online into their mix simply because of the, or at least in part because of the flexibility that it offers.
Thank you, Dean Coleman. This next set of questions is about how we're supporting our graduating seniors and graduate students entering the job market. Here's a question from Christine C. This year's graduating seniors will face a challenging environment, as will other students who count on internships as a gateway to employment. How is CLA helping them? I'll ask Steve Manson, a professor of geography and CLA's Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Programs, as well as Professor Kerner, to tag team on this one.
All right, mic difficulty. We've only been doing Zoom for what, 3 or 4 weeks now, and I'm still trying to figure out the mic button. So
Professor Manson, you are still muted. If you could unmute yourself, please.
sorry. So I'll just start over again. Oscar will talk about the undergraduate side of things, but at the graduate end, CLA has been steadily investing in centralized graduate career services. We now have a full-time director of graduate career services, Mackenzie Sullivan. She's fantastic. She coordinates activities ranging from one-on-one career advising, confidential advising with students, on a range of topics, to working with larger groups of students and employers on a range of different career options. We also offer a range of online career exploration and planning tools. And these span all the way from the arts through the humanities, social sciences, and beyond. We really want to focus on the many ways that graduate career training and graduate training prepares students for a broad array of careers and jobs. We don't focus just on the academy. A lot of our students are in professional programs. Even the PhD, you could argue, is a professional degree, and people end up in a lot of really exciting careers that way. And then in light of the COVID-19 situation, we've moved over to virtual meetings like everyone else. But at the same time, we've really expanded many of our offerings, especially related to networking and looking at the new challenges, but also the new opportunities that the job market offers right now. Right, we're seeing a lot of change in many sectors, so we're trying to address those as well. And I'll hand off to Oscar. Oscar, good luck with your mute button.
Thanks, Steve. Much appreciated. Yes, we have, CLA for the undergrad education, we do have a career services team. It's about 13 career counselors and support staff that help our students in finding careers and transition from college to their pursuits after college, often obviously employment. These services have fully moved online. We have one-on-one appointments. Our career counselors have appointments with students. They have taken up quite rigorously, actually. We have a lot of interest, obviously. A lot of students come to us, ask us about internships and employment situations, and our counselors providing the support. They, of course, have themselves. Our employment team has reached out to the employers, is in constant conversation with them, trying to find out what their situation is, and what the situation is, and how they see the job market, how they can serve our students, the kind of internships that they still offer. Can they move to internships onto distance situations, which we currently require? How they'll be able to support our students. So we have a constant interaction with the employer side to find out what is the changing landscape of employment right now? How will that affect our students so that we can immediately relate that information to our students that come to us for support and advice. We also obviously continue with our ongoing communication. We have a biweekly newsletter for students in which we, again, lay out the labor market, trying to help them identify the resources that they need currently. Quite frankly, it's also a lot of just kind of emotional support for students. A lot of students that had their dream internships lined up for the summer now obviously see those falling apart, and they need a little bit pick me up sometimes when they come and connect with a career counselor. So those are the kind of things that we are doing. We clearly are responding, but it is certainly a very challenging situation. The job market seems to be getting worse and worse by the day, if not by the minute. And we clearly are, but we are certainly reaching out. We are getting the information as soon as we get it, we translate it in ways that students can use it and then make the information available to our students. And so we have also received quite positive feedback from the students from the support that they've received.
Great, thank you so much. These next couple of questions relate to CLA's budget. From Alicia H., what strategies might CLA take to help mitigate the financial losses associated with COVID-19? CLA's Chief Financial Officer is Brent Gustafson. Brent, I'll ask you to take this one.
Thanks, Megan. Just last week, the University's Board of Regents had a pretty wide-ranging discussion about the potential implications of COVID on the university, particularly related to revenues. And in CLA, tuition makes up nearly 3/4 of revenue in the college. And so at this point, a key strategy is really focused around recruiting our incoming freshman class and transfer students, as well as, you heard Oscar and Jamie talk about the continued need and importance of serving students well now and positioning them to return in the fall, be that on campus or continued remote instruction, but to really ensure that our student numbers maintain at their current level, and that's a key source of resource in the college. Beyond that, a lot of what is emerging, the dean talked about how rapidly information is changing in this regard. And so, we're really at the early stages of evaluating impacts, thinking about options, and a lot of what we do going forward likely to be part of university-wide strategies. And we'll also be informed what we need to do, and the scope of potential responses is going to be dictated by the length of the pandemic and the conditions on the ground, stay-at-home orders, campus operations. So there's a lot of emerging information all the time, and we're really at the early stages of evaluating it for impacts on the college.
And we have two more questions about the budget. From Juanita L., will renovation of Pillsbury Hall be affected by budget cuts? And from Bonnie P., any tuition hike for 2021? Brent, what are your thoughts?
Sure, I'll just mention briefly for alums who may not have been on campus recently, Pillsbury Hall is the second oldest building on campus, and it's in the process currently of undergoing a really exciting complete renovation, a $36 million project. So a project of that scale doesn't get started unless the resources are in place. Unfortunately, the state of Minnesota provided $24 million of state bond proceeds toward that project. The university shares a mix of collegiate fundraising and university issued debt. So that project is proceeding. Construction work is exempt from the governor's stay-at-home order. So there's safety precautions being taken for the health of the workers on site, but that project is continuing on schedule, and really exciting change from what used to be the Department of Earth Sciences, which will now house the college's English department, as well as a new engagement hub. With regard to tuition for next year, in the 2021 academic year, President Gable just last week conveyed to the board her intention to bring forward a budget that does not include tuition increases. That's their plan. Ultimately, tuition decisions are made by the Board of Regents, so the president is intending to recommend no tuition increase, and the board will make ultimately that decision in May or June of this year. But right now, we're not planning on a tuition increase for next year.
All right, thank you, Brent. For our final question, a couple of our participants are inviting us to think big. Rebecca M. wants to know, what is the most important thing for the college to retain as we move forward into a world post-COVID-19? And Jeff S. asks, what is the next big thing CLA needs to work on. Dean Coleman, we'll end with you.
Thank you, Megan. One of the things we've been saying in CLA for years now is that we are going to be advocating for the liberal arts and not apologizing for them. That the liberal arts bring much to our society. They prepare students extremely well for successful lives in their careers and beyond that as well. And so that is certainly something that we will continue to do. We will be advocating for the importance of the liberal arts, the importance of creative thinking, the importance of thinking from multiple analytical perspectives, using multiple tools, all of that that's inherent in the liberal arts. So that will certainly continue. We will continue to work with our students around career readiness, which has been a big part of our work over the past 6 years. Moving forward, one of the things that I had been talking about earlier this year, prior to COVID coming upon us, was thinking about another kind of readiness project for our students, and that's civic readiness. How do you enter into a world of high degrees of polarization in a way that you can have constructive dialogue and discussion, in a way that you have a sense of news literacy and data literacy, in a sense of being able to have a sense of humility about what you know and what you don't know, and learn to listen to the perspectives of others and why they have those perspectives that they have. We see this as an opportunity for our students through some curriculum that will help them build these skills that will be valuable in the workplace and valuable in their communities. We see opportunities for research so that we understand these challenges more completely around whether it's polarization itself or around news literacy and so on. And we see a public-facing opportunity here as well. We want to be able to model for our broader community what does sustained, meaningful dialogue and discussion around important public policy issues look like, and what does that entail? So we want to be at the center of that here in Minnesota and in the upper Midwest, of being the leader on that front. So we're very excited about this civic readiness initiative. I've sent information out to all of our alumni and friends about this in email before, and you'll continue to hear about that. It is, in a sense, our next big step in the college, to have our students ready to be successful and to have our faculty really at the forefront of important research and important instruction.
Well, we are coming close to the end of our hour, so we are going to have to wrap up our conversation. I want to thank all of our alumni and friends for your great questions, and thanks also to our staff and faculty experts for their time and insight. Dean Coleman, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share?
I do. First of all, I think I should put on some more appropriate attire. So I did bring this for the occasion. And let me just say, I am so thankful to our alums and friends, all of you tuned in, and those of you who will watch this later recorded. You really sustain us as a college. I think I'm a little crooked there. You sustain us as a college. You provide the support that our students and faculty need. We couldn't be more appreciative and grateful of what you do. So just know how much that matters. When you reach out to a student to help a student, that matters a lot as well. So I just want to thank all of you very sincerely for that. I guess the last thing that I'll say as a closing thought is that we see this as a moment that we want to affirm the value of the liberal arts during this very turbulent time. One way that I talk about the liberal arts is to say that we're kind of the front page of the newspaper. When you look at the front page of the newspaper, you see stories about economics, about social issues, about international conflict, about public health, about all sorts of things. That's what we study in the liberal arts. That's the kind of work we do. We teach that in our classrooms, and we do that in our research as well. So we'll continue to do that as we move forward. And I want to thank all of you for your support of the college and of the University of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Coleman. During this past hour, I hope all of you have gained insights into how your college has responded to the COVID-19 crisis. As our program participants made clear, you can continue to look to CLA as a trustworthy source of information. Please watch your inbox in the coming days for an email with a link to the recording of this event, additional resources mentioned by today's speakers, and an evaluation asking what you thought of the town hall and future topics that you might be interested in. On behalf of everyone in CLA, thank you. You are the heart of what makes CLA an extraordinary center of learning, and it has been an honor to spend this time together. Stay well and safe. Good night.